Welcome to Making It Here. My name is Brant. This is my co-host.
Selina.
And this is Joel with Blackbird Mushrooms.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course.
So, I'd like to start off just asking really simply, tell us how you got here. Where are you?
So I live up
get
at
here?
Big White. Originally moved out to the Okanagan in 2004 with kind of my best friend that I grew up with, that we always dreamed about moving out to a ski hill in BC from Ontario, and I was
Wow.
like to fulfill that dream, and then we did it, and now it's like, although I've boomeranged and come back and left the area, but this has kind of, I suppose, been internally my new home since getting out here without even realizing it, that it's now creeping up on 20 years of living in the area and up at Big White specifically. And I love the area. Like, I love where I live, and just like, it's been like, a true blessing, like kind of following that dream coming out here. Yeah.
So you essentially came from Ontario. It's like multiple countries away.
Yeah.
Ready to come to British Columbia, Canada. And do you love skiing? Is that what drew you to ski hills?
That was the passion, yeah. Like, my friend and I growing up, we always made the joke, like going out to our local ski hill, it was going north of town and then a right-hand turn to get to our resort. But we always made the joke, we're like, one day we're not going to take that turn. We're just going to keep following the Trans-Canada Highway out west. We're not turning off the one day. And then sure enough, it came. And
Wow.
Although there's been multiple trips back and forth, I've driven across this country, I'm not too sure how many times, but I enjoy that as well. It's been great just being able to, sometimes I make the joke, I think I've driven across the country more than possibly some truck drivers have in a career, depending on what they're designated for. But every time it's always been fun, and you kind of seeing a different side of Canada, and some little nooks and crannies that you don't always get to.
Yeah.
And
I've never done
just
that.
do that one day. You just spontaneously drove.
No, it was
Oh,
definitely a planned
a plan.
thing. Yeah, we planned it, and not, we were young, like, I think I was like 19 at the time, so there wasn't a heck of a lot of planning. Like, it was pretty loose, but either way we did it. And then like even that first year driving out, my dad making fun of me because the vehicle I was driving was a bit older, and before leaving he like built me a toolbox with a bunch of tools. I guess he was under the mindset that I was going to be
for when you break
doing
down,
a bit of
Joel.
work along the way, and he's just like, you guys aren't even going to make it to Manitoba.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that vehicle made it all the way out to BC and then back, and and so it did me well. Yeah.
So you dreamed of, following the snow in a sense?
Yeah.
And you came out. Big White, is essentially like a small city, well, a town at least now, but it was a lot smaller a few years ago, and it's in the high mountain.
Yeah.
And so you actually thought about living there year round right from the start?
No, not year round from the start. Initially, it was just coming out for the winter, and this is where I guess going back to how many times I've driven across the country. So there's the first 10 years of being out here, it was just solely for the winter and living up at Big White, and then summers I would commute back to Ontario, and that's where I was employed with the government fighting forest fires. So it was kind of a nice balance of going home with a good job and then also being near my family, and then coming back out here and spending my winters here. And then, like where I say, like not realizing how the Okanagan has really grown on me in just this region, because everybody knows it for being a summer place. Mm-hmm. And then I got out here and had not experienced the summer or even witnessed or known anything about it. And, and everybody always asked me, like, why do you leave? It's just getting good.
Yeah, the fruit's
And you
just
thought,
coming
hey,
on.
they have summers as well.
Yeah, I know. And then I was staying out here. I'm like, oh, right. Okay. I see the appeal. Like, this is like, there's so much to do here. Like, yeah, it's.
So this is something I hadn't really explored with you before. So, when we're watching the news these days, and every summer there's these, thousands of sort of anonymous uniformed firefighters out there trying to protect so much of our country from these fires, and you're one of those people.
Like I've definitely had a very active role in it for maybe like 16 years.
Wow.
That I was like, actively fighting forest fires, and kind of done it through a few different umbrellas and governments as well. And then the transition from that was, it was just a back injury, and then kind of left me reevaluating what I do for a job and how intensive and physically demanding that is, and just what I was then recovering from. So I had to let go of it for some time, and then, but I think that was like letting go of something, you know, as the old saying goes, like another door opens, and that back injury was like kind of what honestly led me to this business in the start. And so like, you know, you have a routine, but sometimes getting interrupted is a good thing to discover some new things.
And you hurt your back firefighting.
Skiing.
Oh, skiing.
Yeah.
Figured it was one of the two.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. If you'd said no, I was just walking down an alley, I'd have been shocked.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because those are two pretty intensive, or can be intensive.
Yeah,
things.
for sure.
Intense recreation, intense work.
And that was it. Like I didn't get surgery on my back, but like I remember having a consultation with a surgeon, and he was kind of looking at my, I guess, life and just the things that I've chose to do as far as job and recreation. And he was just like, you've done a lot, you know, you've put a lot of wear and tear on your body in a short period of time. And then even just for fun, I remember like calculating math on like how much I ski on average in a winter, and then realizing like I got maybe like 75 years of skiing under my belt already.
Oh, wow.
You know, in such a short period of time. And it's just like, okay, maybe there's a reason why things are starting not to work and break and function the way they used to.
Well, want to have more life that's normally
healthy.
Sorry.
You know?
Okay, so can you still ski, but just recreationally more?
I still do it for a career. Like it's still my job. It's still my passion. And that was like kind of the hard slap in the face when I had that meeting with the consultation with the surgeon, and they're looking at my, you know, the years of, call it abuse that I've done to my body and just doing these sports and jobs that I have. He was trying to promote a new lifestyle change, you know, oh, you're young enough, you should go back to school. Maybe you got to steer away from this stuff and consider an office job. And I remember walking out of there and being quite upset and thinking, I'm like, this guy doesn't know me, you know, he doesn't know the thing that, you know, makes me tick or makes my heart beat, or, you know, what identifies me as being me. And like, I remember thinking, I'm like, if I took that advice, I'm like, that essentially would be a spiritual suicide for myself. I'm like just thinking about that. And then, you know, through some kind of digging and, you know, and then talking to people and stuff like that, there was a huge lifestyle change, and kind of saw things a little clear on, no, I can still do these things. You know, maybe firefighting is going to take some time getting back into it, skiing being the biggest passion. So I just kind of, changed everything, like my diet and just everything, you know, how I was like, I remember thinking about that new lifestyle too. It's just like the diet, the exercise and all that. I remember one moment being a little bit deterred. I'm like, this sounds exhausting. You know, I'm like, but if it's the, you know, if it's what you got to do to live, you know, your life to what you identify as the fullest, then that's what you're doing, you know? So it's like, no looking back. And it's just like, sometimes I wonder if like those doctors and surgeons do that, knowing that everybody's slightly stubborn headed to a certain degree. And they put you in that position of saying, no, you can't, no, you won't, you got to do this. And knowing that guy's going to walk out of the door, and I sure hope he proves me wrong. You know, I'm not too sure if those surgeons like being proven wrong.
I think maybe some of them.
I hope so. I hope they kind of, can see like, I want to tell this person, no, this is not possible. And now the ball's in their court, you know, versus, you know, and that's where you know, sometimes that's the motivation that pushes people forward. You know, it sounds kind of weird in a sense, but the negative or the negativity, just that urge or desire to prove those individuals wrong, right? Versus sometimes having all the support in the world is almost too comforting and easy to come up with excuses, you know, on, I don't know, like that you don't need to try as much. I don't know. There's
totally well, because I said to Brent, just get somebody to tell me I can't do it, and I will prove that I can't. Even if,
Exactly, right? I think that's what I mean.
It's that real determination.
Every human's somewhat stubborn-headed, and like saying earlier, you have a designated path or a dream for yourself. It's just like things are getting in the way, but it depends how like bullheaded you are. You're going to keep pushing through those barriers and until you get what you want, right? So
some people, I think, there's a big variety, there's a big diversity in personalities, but for some people, that's actually really helpful. I think.
Yeah.
To get that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that really opened your eyes to what could you do. So you've made quite a diverse range of products now. So tell us a little bit about how you came to.
So I didn't know about the chaga mushroom until this back injury, when I was dealing with this back injury, and then it was a friend's dad. I guess my friend was telling him that I've been going through this injury and had not taken any pain medicine or any prescribed pill of any form, and I was just, I guess, all natural. And my friend's dad was just like, wow, he's really toughing that out the hard way, is he? And then talking with my friend's dad, he starts talking about chaga mushroom, how it grows on a birch tree, and it's a huge anti-inflammatory. And I thought, I'm open-minded to trying just about anything, depending, it's just, but reluctant on some potentially addictive traits that some of the pain medicine has out there. I thought this seems pretty harmless and this like a natural option. And then even in a weird sense too, it's just like, him telling me about it was also then, it promoted me going out walking and foraging the mushroom. So like, it was almost like a backhanded like physio at the same time, right? And then I just kind of gravitated towards it. And, like I said, I'm not going to like attest that everything like, correcting my back healing because of chaga mushroom. They said there was a big lifestyle change and everything compiled together. And I believe this being, a piece of the puzzle that kind of got me to where I am today. And just like, and then just throughout that time of taking that break from firefighting, I was just harvesting the mushroom for myself, and then word of mouth kind of started being the first kind of way of introducing it to some people. And then
you start getting requests for.
Yeah, and I did a couple like marketplace kind of advertisements, and then started seeing some interest build, and then just having a little bit of time on my hand, and it just kind of just kind of naturally started becoming a real business. And then my partner, her and I, like, I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. Just like kind of really getting the business into something tangible and real. So it was a lot of work, but we, did it together. And then just, like I said, the anti-inflammatory properties was the reason why I got introduced to the mushroom in the first place. But then as we started kind of seeing all these other health benefits, is then where all these other products kind of stemmed from, of just like, well, what can we do to highlight some of these properties of the mushroom? How can we create something to highlight some of this? So, it's been a continuous like work in progress, and like, there's been some trial and error like any time. And but that's the fun thing about being a business, is sometimes you see a great success, and sometimes you're just like, well, okay, that was a learning experience. But yeah.
Wow. And is it just you dry them? You don't add other stuff to them. You basically dry them, and then your other products you add.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just, you find the mushroom in ranges of sizes. It grows, like I think I mentioned, on a birch tree. And then so, ranges in sizes. So like first I'll knock it off the tree, and then, and then like as far as harvesting practices, you never want to over harvest it, because then it can kill the tree and it won't grow back. So I've been pretty cognizant and I think very considerate to the trees that I harvest off. So knowing that the mushroom can grow back every 3 to 5 years, so long as it's not over harvested. So I only take what kind of comes off easily, and then so I've started like actually like marking some trees and kind of getting to know the area, and then I can go back and check on them, and instead of maybe every summer retracing steps and being like, I've been in that area, so I can move over to this area, and kind of move back and forth. And then it's like a good way to kind of almost build a rapport with the trees in the forest that I'm working in. So it's, and then dry it out. And like I say, the bigger pieces.
That's huge. Like that's really literally the size you're talking.
I've seen, some big pieces. I think that's like maybe on the scale, like the bigger pieces, right? And that's like, that's a big payday. But that's a good day when you find.
When you see a tree like that,
melon size, baseball size. That's kind of your standard size that you'd be finding out there. So
how big are the birch trees? Like, are they as big as the mushroom grows around them, or they can be little guys and they just grow up the side or something?
Like I'm not too sure exactly the rhyme or reason how it. Like there's different things you can see online. Like it doesn't grow on every birch tree. I've read things saying like it's like 1 in every 3,000. I think that's a little extreme. Like I know I've definitely found it on, but then there's some areas where you'll just find like a cluster of birch that a bunch of them all have it on it. And then how they grow, like I found them right at ground level, and then sometimes they're a little bit higher, and sometimes they're just too high that I'm thinking that's not worth
killing yourself.
Yeah, it's just like, so you kind of make a little bit of risk analysis and be like, is that worth it? Is it that big?
Have your climbing spikes on?
Yeah, like I got a harness and stuff like that, so I can climb a little bit, and
maybe you can just stay there and breed, right?
Yeah.
Do you just as a thought, like, does your family have any acreage of birch at all?
Oh yeah. So they got about 8 acres.
Okay.
Yeah,
have you thought about like actually inoculating trees?
So I think like the chaga mushroom that makes it really unique, and I don't know if like it wasn't even my intention to gravitate towards it and start this business, but it's like the more I learned about it, the more interesting, and I guess honored that I felt working with this specific mushroom is like, because it can't be synthetically duplicated. So like
that's great. Actually,
drilling the holes and doing the stumps and like inoculating it that way is like you can grow turkey tails very well, right? And it's like would be a direction that I think I'd like to go to and trying to expand the business. But at the moment it's like it's been busy enough and kind of continuous that just simply this one, specializing in this one, it's kind of been neat in a way, and and the people who know it stands out. That's like, especially in this region where I always get asked like, where are you finding chaga around here?
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
It's just like mushroom hunters.
Yeah.
Code is it's precious.
Quiet. Yeah. Like a fishing spot.
I wonder even if there's, as we've learned about nature more, that there's so much synergy, and this idea of competition that I think humans have tried to anthropomorphize onto nature is actually not really true, because if they're studying where the older trees will actually send nutrients to the younger trees of any species. It's not like my species and the bigger the better, trying to kill out the younger ones. It's actually a very supportive system. And I wonder if maybe there's actually a synergy where there's an agreement between the tree and the fungi to say, hey, let's make a home together.
Why I find clusters of them on, I'll find chunks on a handful of trees in an area, and I've been curious to, that like, why is it just isolated in this area? And then I can walk by now another 100 birch trees and there'd be nothing. And then maybe I might find an isolated tree with one on it, but then every now and again you're like, that was a gold mine. Like, I just like found 12 trees in this little patch here, and they somehow all had it, were different sides. Like, it's not like they all seem to grow on the western side, or, and then it's, like I said, variable heights too. So I'm like, the answer there, I'm not too sure, but it's just like, I think
there must be something.
Yeah, I think that's like, when I look at it, I'm like, I think that's what makes it really unique and almost like spiritual in a sense there too, where it's just like, it's saying like it can't be synthetically cultivated. So like, to be as healthy as it is, it comes from like, this synergy of being connected into the forest. And that's why I tell people, it's just like, depending where the mushroom comes from, like there's, you can grow it, but you're just growing water weight and a placebo effect essentially. So
they don't have nutrients.
So you mean it will grow, but it won't have the medicinal qualities?
Exactly. Like, so there was a study there, it was a University of Boston. And I always like telling people that too. It's just like anything, right? Like you were talking about the apples earlier, and it's just like the quality of the apple. Okay, sure, they're both round and red, but you take your first bite, you can tell the difference of,
Oh yeah.
you know, the quality one versus maybe the other one that's not so quality. And then so like, yeah, when I start talking about the mushroom too, it's just like to know where it comes from. And like I always like to promote that too. Is just like I do it all myself. It's me harvesting it myself, so that you don't have to question on like, where is this coming from? Is it actually like, am I just having the blinders pulled over my eyes because I heard about this thing and it's super healthy? But I didn't ask any more questions other than that.
Yeah.
You know, but I bought into the product and actually I don't know much about it, you know. So am I actually taking something that's worthwhile, or am I just like wishful thinking and buying into a placebo effect unknowingly?
Well, and like these bottles of pills, I mean, it's, our teacher once said, she said, you know, there's all these health food stores. You walk into a health food store and you look at the drugstore next door. Well, they're both shelves filled with bottles of pills.
Yeah.
And so is it, you know, what are we actually getting, and what's the quality? And I mean, in this day and age, a lot of people, I mean, you just open a box from somewhere overseas and you know, you read a label, but as to what's actually there. And that's why I say to people, connecting with the farmers market and local craftspeople and artisans, you connect with something far more than just what's on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually getting an opportunity to, if you can't make it out to the woods, when you say, go to your product, go to you, talk to you, you're actually getting that connection with the woods, because it's pretty much like me to you to the tree.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
And that's like with our fruit and our juices, you know, people every day come to the market and say, wow, I've never tasted an apple like that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why not? But it's just a higher level of connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, even for the person buying it, to feel before they've even put something in their body, they're first off, they're getting that connection with you, and they're getting connection with a real product.
Mm-hmm.
And that opportunity is priceless in this world of, you know, stamp it out, you know, out of a
Assembly
machine,
line.
fire it off in Amazon
And the
boxes.
birch trees probably look forward to you coming now. They'll say, here
I
comes
hope so,
Joel
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
How did you come up with some of your recipes? Like, you've got quite a few different types of soaps and.
Yeah. So I got to give credit to my partner that I was working with. Like, she had a background, or has a background, in working at it was like a natural perfume studio. And then her and her friend were just making soaps as a hobby. And, you know, as her and I were getting the mushroom business going, that's where I said, I saw all these benefits adding up, you know, that all related to skincare. That's where I said, I'm like, you used to make soap. I'm like, we're gonna make soap again. Like, you know, it's funny. It was like, it's her knowledge and experience that she brought to the table there. But I think it was just like me connecting the dots. I'm like, you're going to start making soap again, and we're going to infuse the soaps with mushrooms. We're like,
cool.
Let's try that. Like, you know, and then like just hearing feedback from people and how much they love them, and then like spark the salve, because like, the original idea is because it's good for psoriasis and eczema. And then just hearing like kind of it becoming very multifunctional, and people telling us what they've been using it for. And it's just like, oh, nice. Okay. There's another one we can kind of talk about.
On psoriasis, because I know people that have psoriasis that very little works.
So my partner, she had eczema and she was taking a hydrocortisone, like the pills or some, kind of most of her life. And I was like, funny, like when we got together, it was just like, I always made that joke of just like, when two people get together, you know, sometimes there's some baggage brought into the relationship. And then it sounds like, I guess, my baggage, like, you know, that's what I was saying. I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm about this mushroom. I'm like, I drink it daily. It's not a big deal. I add it to my coffee, and I'm like, this is going to work. You know, I hope you're okay with this kind of thing.
Doesn't smell like garlic.
Yeah. And then like, you know, and then later on, that's when the business started. And then, so she was noticing just ingesting it and drinking it in tea or coffee, her skin was improving. And, you know, and then that was the one kind of just seemed like all the stars aligned for the soap kind of thing. Right. Kind of all lined up at once. And there was a lot of like, kind of, I don't know, call them coincidences, or just like, you know, they're meant to be kind of thing with this business. Is just like, yeah, that kind of all just happened. I don't even call them omens or whatever. Yeah, that, you know, and then you kind of get that feeling and you're like, yeah, this feels right. This is the right path, you know?
I know we went down some roads, and I could talk for hours, but I want to maybe land on one more question.
Sure, yeah.
As you develop this, you come across literally the whole nation, thousands of miles. You've come to this western part of Canada, and you brought gifts from the back east, from the far east.
Yeah.
And you brought this, and you traveled back and forth to develop something that was beneficial to yourself. And you realized that was demonstrated, and you then shared it with others. So as you've created this, and you've gone through this journey, multi-decade journey to do this, do you see now a legacy begin to build? Or do you have a vision for what you want to really have this gift carried on?
That's hard. That's the one hard thing, I guess, to see the direction of where it's going. Like, I think, you know, as you're saying before, it's just like you have your business, you have what you make, and you're comfortable with that, and you have your lifestyle, and you're happy doing that. The upscale, what would you be giving up? And like, where, you know, I've been approached for wholesaling to people, and I've kind of been very reluctant on wholesaling or what I wholesale to, or who, the fear of them being very successful with my product, because, you know, honoring that one guy kind of harvesting small scale, very low impact, environmentally conscious to, you know, how I'm doing it and where it's being done and how often it's being done. That would obviously, you know, I would lose some of that credibility to that, because then if, like, you know, if you want to start carrying this, and then next thing you know, you're selling whatever, you know, X amount of bags a month and stuff like that, and that's more than I've ever done. Now I would have this like kind of obligation to wanting to come fulfill your orders.
Yeah.
And then
where are you going to get it? How are you going to get it?
Yeah. So then I guess that's the idea. So where's the legacy, or like how do I upscale from here? So it would be then like, okay, does that then take me out of British Columbia, and I'm now living back in Ontario, and I'm like now practically a full-time harvester? Or can I incentivize some friends? And that's actually what I've kind of been doing, actually. So like, where I grew up in Northern Ontario, like all my friends are outdoorsy guys and stuff like that. And I've even made the joke, I'm like, if you ever see Chug on a tree, I'm like, take a GPS coordinate, and I'm like, I'll buy it off you. I'm like, I'll trade you something for it, or, you know, whatever. So some of my friends that I've grown up with, and my parents as well, like every time I go back, all behind my parents' house, like my dad's like, oh, I got some mental notes where they are, and takes me on some hikes, and he's just like, there's one, like, you know, that he's already been citing out for me. And even some friends not long ago, my one friend's just like, he's like, I think I found a huge piece. He's like, it's like the size of my head. And I'm like, okay, that's a good piece.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And I'm like, you take me there when I get home? He's like, oh yeah, of course. And so like, you know, I kind of have some friends, like they're doing it just, you know, just because they're my friends right now. But then I think I'm like, upscaling, then I would then need to employ, I don't know, my nephew, which wouldn't be a bad idea. Like, you know, just saying, you know, like,
and maybe teach him, you know, what you've learned.
This is what I do, you know, go out and do it and be careful and considerate. You know, and even one of what I think, honestly, like the upscaling thing too, it's just like, you know, like talking about omens or just like being spiritually connected or just like listening and stuff like that. It's just like, I've had some pretty interesting moments out there where even the last time I was at home harvesting, I had a mental goal of how much I wanted to get. And I got it. You know, I got what I wanted to get. And then I still had some time at home that I was already planning on being there visiting family and friends. Man, I thought I'd go out one last morning to go and harvest some more. So like what I do, it's just like, you know, like kind of depending the size of the mushroom, sometimes you just break them off with your hand. But I just got a hatchet, and most of the time it's just like one strike, and you just kind of find like a purchase point, they call it, and then use the hatchet and leverage and pop the thing off, and that's it. But they, you know, so often I'll hold the mushroom just so it doesn't go flying and stuff like that, as well. So that last day I was out there harvesting, I found some, and I took my one whack with the hatchet. I hit a finger.
Oh no!
My finger, it's like just the end, but really cut it open and started bleeding.
Oh jeez!
And I looked, and I'm just like, that means no more. That means no more, right? I'm like, I'm like, you know, wherever my moral or my ethical harvesting and however much that is, I think I set a realistic goal. I met it, and now I'm being greedy, and the forest has told me no, and I'm like, you know, I'm like, there's no more. Yeah, got it.
And my guess would be, like, from my perspective, if you can make a good living when you have that control, it's like everybody says to Brant, why don't you go to stores? Why don't you do it? And I said, because the quality gets cut. Him and I are really fussy. And then once you go big, then you got to hire more people that aren't as careful. And then you got to do all that. And to me, my own personal thing is that bigger is not always better. Like, you have high quality, both of them, the juice and the mushrooms, high quality. Once you get too many people involved, you lose your ability to quality control. And if you can make a nice living without, like you say, going back and being a full-time harvester, why do that when you can do both now and be happy doing it? Like, to me, there's not that much incentive for the big thing. That's what all the big corporations did.
Yeah.
Big, but there's no quality, no love, no individual like pride in it, and you give up your dream that you started.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, staying focused on like your values that you kind of established day one, or you know, year one in your business, and being like, this is what I want to be about. The love is always going to be there, but then you're upscaling, and all of a sudden now the love is kind of fading, and then some of the other quality, and then you're wanting to maybe produce those apples quicker, so things are changing in your growing practices.
And then you're like, just it all, I don't know, it just snowballs.
For sure, yeah, and everybody's done that before. Like, you know, they always say, like, you know, work and do something that you love to do, but then there's always a balance of, well, overcommitting to that and then really trying to make it work, and then it kind of ruins that passion.
So we're almost finished, and that was very hard to fill in all that time with things to talk about.
Yeah, there wasn't very much dead air, was there?
Superb.
Thank you,
Joel.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, you as well.
And that's making it here.